My name is Diana Archer. I'm 27 years old. And last Friday night, my parents invited me home for dinner, then locked the door, sat me down in front of a marriage contract with a man I had never met, and said, "This is happening tonight." There was an officiant in the corner of the living room. My father stood blocking the only exit. My mother looked at me the way you look at a problem you have already solved. Calm, certain, finished. And you know what? She was right. Everything had already been decided. Just not the way she thought. Before I go on, if this story hits something real for you, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. And if you're listening right now, drop a comment telling me where you are and what time it is. I'm always curious who's up with me. Now, let me take you back 2 weeks to the day it all started. Not the dinner, but the phone call from Aunt Denise. I should tell you who I am before all of this. Or who I was really, because those feel like two different people now. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes outside Grayfield, Georgia. I work as an administrative assistant at a veterinary clinic. I pay my rent on time. I don't drink, don't smoke, don't stay out past 10 unless I'm binge-watching something on the couch with my cat. By every measure that matters to me, my life is quiet and fine. But to my mother, Lorraine Archer, quiet and fine is just another way of saying failure. She calls at least 3 times a week, not to ask how I'm doing, but to check. Where was I Saturday? Who was I with? Why haven't I put myself out there? And always, 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 you're 27 and still alone, Diana. Do you know what people say about that? I stopped answering most of the time. That made it worse. Last Thanksgiving, I drove the 45 minutes home because she guilt-tripped me for 3 straight days. I walked through the front door, and before I could even set the pie down, she turned to my uncle's wife and said, "This is Diana, still single, still working at that little dog clinic." She laughed when she said it, like it was a joke everyone was already in on. My father, Gerald, sat at the head of the table and said nothing. He never does. He just nodded, this slow, heavy nod, like he agreed with every word but couldn't be bothered to say them himself. And his silence has always been louder than her voice. I was 24 the first time I thought it. Maybe loving your parents doesn't mean you have to survive everything they do to you. That year, I started keeping a notebook. I didn't know why yet. 2 Thursdays ago, I was at the clinic restocking the supply cabinet when my phone buzzed. Aunt Denise. She never calls during work hours. I stepped outside, leaned against the brick wall by the dumpsters, and answered. "Diana." Her voice was shaking. Not the dramatic kind, the kind that comes from someone trying very hard to hold it together. "I need you to listen to me and not say anything until I'm done." I didn't say anything. "Your mother called me this afternoon." She was excited, bragging, really. She said tomorrow night, Friday, they're having a dinner at the house. She said they're going to take care of the Diana situation. There's a man. His name is Wade Prescott. He's 38. There's an officiant coming, and there's a contract. I said her name 3 times before I believed her. Denise. 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 What do you mean a contract? A marriage contract. Baby. Pre-signed by your mother and your father. She told me Wade's family owns land out past Route 12, and your daddy owes them money. She wanted me to come and witness my niece finally doing the right thing. Denise paused. I told her I was busy. But I am not letting you walk into that house blind. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time after we hung up. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Not from fear exactly, from the feeling of something clicking into place. All those years of phone calls and guilt and silence suddenly forming a shape I could see. Denise said one more thing before she hung up. Quiet, steady, like she had been saving it. "You don't owe them your life, Diana." I had 24 hours. And this time, I wasn't going to be good. On the drive home that night, I ran every situation I could think of. If I don't show up, Mom calls every relative within 50 miles and tells them I've abandoned the family. She tells the women at her walking group that I'm unstable. She reshapes the story until I'm the villain. And in Grayfield, once you're the villain, you stay the villain. A small town has a long memory and a short attention span for context. If I show up and refuse, Dad blocks the door. I know this because he has done it before. Not for a wedding, but 3 years ago when I packed a bag and told them I was moving out. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and said 5 words. You walk out, don't come back. I walked anyway. But that night, there was no officiant, no stranger in a vest, no contract with my name on it. If I show up and say yes, I lose everything I've built. The apartment, the job, the 3 years of learning what silence sounds like when it's chosen, not enforced. I pulled into my parking spot and sat in the dark for a while. The engine ticked. A neighbor's TV flickered blue through their window. And then I remembered something. The notebook. 3 years of entries. Dates. Times. Exact words. Every phone call where Mom told me I was embarrassing the family. Every text from Dad that was just a period. His way of saying I had disappointed him without spelling it out. Screenshots of voicemails. I had kept it because I thought I was losing my mind. I needed proof for myself that what I felt was real. I didn't know it yet, but that notebook was about to become something else entirely. I pulled the notebook from my nightstand drawer. Navy blue cover. Dog-eared corners. 3 years of my mother's voice pressed flat between the pages like dried flowers. Except nothing about them was beautiful. I flipped through over 200 entries. October 14th. 2 years ago. Mom called at 11 p.m. and said if I don't come home for Christmas, she'll tell Grandma I'm living with a man. I live alone. March 3rd last year. Dad texted. Your mother cried all night. No context. I called back. He hung up after 10 seconds. July 19th. Mom told Aunt Patrice I got fired from the clinic. I didn't. She just doesn't think it's a real job. Entry after entry after entry. Dates, direct quotes, screenshots taped to the pages with Scotch tape. I didn't know what I had been building. I just knew I needed to see it outside of my own head. I called Megan Torres at 11 that night. Megan and I went to high school together. She's a paralegal now at the county attorney's office. She picked up on the second ring, which tells you everything about the kind of friend she is. I told her everything. The call from Denise, the dinner, the contract, Wade Prescott, the officiant. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that changed the next 24 hours of my life. Diana, listen to me. This isn't family drama. This is coercive control. And Georgia law has a process for this. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just writing down what was happening to me. I was deciding what I was going to do about it. Friday morning, I called Dr. Marsh at the clinic and told her I needed a personal day. She didn't ask questions. She never does. That's why I've stayed 3 years. By 8:30, I was in my car, driving 30 minutes to the county courthouse. Megan met me in the lobby. She had already pulled the forms. I prepped everything last night, she said, handing me a clipboard. Emergency Protective Order application. You fill in the story. I'll walk you through it. I sat at a metal table in the courthouse hallway and wrote. Not the whole notebook. Just the pattern. 3 years of calls, the isolation, the guilt, the time Dad physically blocked the door, and what Denise told me was being planned for tonight. I attached photocopies of 42 notebook pages and 14 screenshots. By 10:15, a duty judge reviewed the application. By 11 she signed it. I held the paper in my hands and read the words twice. My name, my parents' names, 500 feet. Effective immediately. Then Megan handed me a second form. Adult Protective Services complaint. This documents the pattern. Coercive control over an extended period. It triggers a formal investigation. I signed it. She filed it electronically while I sat in the car. Then she made one more call to the police. She gave them the address on Buckner Road, my parents' house, and explained that I would be there that evening, that a protective order was in effect, and that I might need help. At 6:45 that evening, I pulled up to the curb outside my parents' house. The porch light was on. Mom's car in the driveway. A black truck I didn't recognize parked behind it. I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, dropped it in my purse, and took a breath. I wasn't scared to walk into that house. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared at all. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue. Mom never leaves the door unlocked. I stepped inside, and the living room stopped me cold. White tablecloth over the dining table. Fresh flowers in a vase I had never seen before. Candles. Actual candles. lit along the fireplace. The room smelled like gardenias and furniture polish. The way Mom only makes it smell when she wants to impress someone. This was not a family dinner. A man stood up from the couch. Tall, dark sport coat over a pressed shirt, clean-shaven, somewhere around 38. He looked at me and gave a single nod, slow, measured, like we had already agreed on something. I had never seen him in my life. In the corner near the bookshelf sat a second man, older, maybe early 60s, holding a leather folder on his lap. He wore a gray suit that didn't quite fit right. He smiled at me the way people smile at nervous brides. Aunt Denise had described every detail. The man on the couch, the officiant in the corner, even where they would be sitting. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, beaming. There she is. Come in, sweetheart. Everyone's been waiting. She said it like this was a birthday party. Like I was late and everyone had been so patient. I looked at the couch, at the officiant, at the white tablecloth and the candles and the flowers. I looked at the empty chair they had set out for me, directly across from the man I had never met, with a pen placed neatly beside the plate. No dinner. No food at all. Just a stage. And then I heard the deadbolt click behind me. I turned around. Dad was standing at the front door, arms crossed, back against the frame. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Before I could sit, Mom slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. 6 pages, stapled at the corner, blue ink. I looked down. The header read, Marital Agreement and Covenant of Union. Page 3 had 2 signatures at the bottom. Gerald T. Archer. Lorraine M. Archer. Under a line that said, Parental Consent and Endorsement. My name was already typed into every blank. Diana Marie Archer, printed neatly, like a form letter. It was like I was a box someone had checked. What is this? Mom folded her hands on the table. Your future. Who signed this section? Your father and I. Because you won't do it yourself. I've never met this person. You're meeting him right now. Sit down. The man on the couch stepped forward. He held out his hand. I didn't take it. I'm Wade Prescott, he said. His voice was flat. Not nervous, not warm, like he was closing a business deal. I think you'll find the terms very reasonable. I looked at the officiant in the corner. He shifted the leather folder on his lap. He looked everywhere except at me. I looked back at the contract. Something in the wording caught my eye, a clause I almost skimmed past. I held it. I didn't react. Not yet. Wade's family has been very patient, Mom said, touching my arm. Very generous. Wade checked his watch. That was when I understood something I hadn't fully grasped until that moment. He wasn't here because he wanted a wife. He was here because he was collecting on a debt, and I was the payment. I looked at the pen beside my plate. Looked at the blank signature line with my name typed beneath it. I didn't pick it up. I set the contract down. Stood up. Chair legs scraped the floor. I'm not signing this. Mom's smile didn't move. You haven't finished reading it. I don't need to finish reading it. I don't agree to this. I turned toward the front door. 2 steps. 3. Dad was already there. Same posture as 3 years ago. Back flat against the door. Arms folded across his chest. Chin down. A wall made of flannel and silence. I stopped 2 feet from him. Close enough to smell the motor oil that never quite washes out of his hands. Move, Dad. Nothing. Dad. Move. His eyes flicked over my shoulder toward Mom, then came back to me. He didn't unfold his arms, didn't shift his weight. He just stood there, solid, the way he stood in every doorway of every decision I had ever tried to make. Behind me, Mom's voice. See, you're not going anywhere tonight, Diana. I felt the room tighten. The officiant coughed quietly. Wade sat back down on the couch, crossing one leg over the other, like he had all the time in the world. 3 years ago, this exact scene made me cry. Dad in the doorway. Mom narrating my failure from behind. Me caught in the middle with nowhere to go. I cried, and I pushed past him and I left. And I didn't come back for 8 months. But tonight, there was a contract on the table, an officiant with a folder, and a stranger who had driven here to marry a woman he had never spoken to. Tonight was different. I breathed in, turned around, walked back to the table, and sat down. Not because I had given up. Mom's eyes lit up when she saw me sit. She thought she had won. She hadn't. Mom sat across from me and reached for my hands. I let her take them. It took everything I had not to pull away. Diana. Her voice softened. The same tone she used when I was 12 and didn't make the volleyball team. The same tone she used when she told me my dog had to be put down. The sympathy voice. The weapon she had been sharpening for 27 years. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I gave up everything. My figure, my social life, my career, for you. 27 years. Diana. And all I'm asking, the one thing I've ever asked, is that you let me hold my head up in this town. A tear slid down her cheek. Right on cue. I watched the officiant shift in his chair. He looked uncomfortable. Good. He should be. Wade didn't look at the tears. He looked at his watch again. The tears weren't for him. They weren't really for me either. They were for the officiant. A performance to keep him in his seat. Mom, I said. Don't mom me. Not tonight. Tonight you're going to do the right thing for once. I looked at the contract, at the pen, at the candles flickering on the mantel. Then I looked at my mother. Really looked, and I recognized the pattern. The tears, then the guilt, then the demand. She had done it when I wanted to go to college out of state. When I wanted to move out. When I wanted to stop calling every day. Cry, blame, control. Cry, blame, control. 3 years ago, this room would have broken me. Tonight, it just confirmed every single entry in that notebook. I picked up the contract. Mom stopped crying. Her eyes went bright with hope. But I didn't reach for the pen. Sitting at that table, I kept asking myself, why did my mother think this would work? Did she honestly believe I would sign a marriage contract with a stranger just because she cried? Or did she know and simply not care? I still think about that. What makes a parent cross that line? From wanting the best for their child to deciding they own their child's future. What do you think? Why do some parents go this far to control an adult child? Tell me in the comments. I held the contract in both hands. 6 pages. My whole life reduced to blue ink and blank signature lines. Then I turned, not to my mother, not to Wade, to the man in the corner. Excuse me. My voice was steady. I was surprised by that. May I ask you something? The officiant straightened up. Of course. When were you contacted about this ceremony, and by whom? He blinked. Mrs. Archer reached out to me last week. She said both parties had consented. A pause. He glanced at my mother. Tonight is the first time I've learned about this marriage. It's the first time I've met Mr. Prescott. And it's the first time I've seen this contract. I held it up so he could see. My name was filled in without my knowledge. The room went quiet. Not the comfortable kind, the kind where everyone is calculating their next move. The officiant, I would later learn his name was Dale Kenner, 62, licensed through the county, looked at my mother. His expression had changed. The polite smile was gone. Mrs. Archer, you told me both parties. She's nervous, Mom said quickly. Pre-wedding jitters. You know how young women are. I'm not nervous, I said. I'm telling you the facts. Kenner looked at the contract in my hands, then at the door where my father stood, then back at me. I leaned forward slightly. Just enough. You understand that under Georgia law, a marriage ceremony conducted without the voluntary consent of both adult parties is void, and the officiant who performs it can face criminal charges. I watched the color leave his face, one shade at a time. Mom laughed. Diana, stop with the dramatics. But Kenner wasn't laughing. And he wasn't sitting comfortably anymore. Something shifted in the room. I could feel it, like a current changing direction. Kenner moved to stand. Mom's hand shot out. Sit down. Her voice dropped the sweetness like a mask hitting the floor. She turned to me, and for the first time that night, I saw the real Lorraine Archer. Not the crying mother. Not the gracious hostess. The controller. Diana Marie Archer. I am not asking your opinion. I am telling you what's going to happen. From the door, Dad spoke for the first time. 2 words, heavy as concrete. Listen to your mother. Mom turned to Kenner. You do your job. I've already paid you. Kenner stayed frozen, half standing, hand on the armrest. Wade shifted on the couch. The friendly, reasonable look cracked just enough for me to see the impatience underneath. I didn't drive 40 minutes for a debate. Are we doing this or not? I looked directly at him. Are you asking me or them? Because from where I'm sitting, you're negotiating with my parents. Not with me. Wade's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Gerald. I felt my purse against my hip. Inside it, folded in an envelope, was something none of them knew about. My hand drifted to the strap, just briefly, but I pulled it back. Not yet. I checked the time. The microwave clock in the kitchen read 7:32 p.m. Mom stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret, but her eyes were hard. 3 years you've been living on your own. And what do you have to show for it? A cheap apartment and somebody else's dogs. She said it like a fact. Like she had measured my life and found it lacking. I held her gaze. And behind that gaze, behind everything, I started counting minutes. My phone buzzed inside my purse once, then a second time. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. I knew who it was. Megan had said she would text when the police confirmed. Mom was still talking. Something about Wade's family, their property, how established they were. I heard every third word. The rest was noise. And his mother, God rest her, would have loved you. Diana. Mom's voice sharpened. Are you listening? Every word. She leaned across the table. Her perfume, that heavy vanilla she has worn since I was a child, filled the space between us. You have 2 choices. You sign this contract, or you never call me Mom again. I heard it. I really heard it. And something strange happened. I felt lighter. Like she had just unlocked a door she meant to seal shut. She had given me permission to leave. I looked around the room one final time. Dad at the door, arms still crossed. Mom, red-faced, jaw tight. Wade on the couch. Patient in the way people are patient when they believe they are buying something that is already theirs. Kenner in the corner, looking like he wished he were anywhere else on earth. Under the table, I slid my phone out just far enough to see the screen. Megan's message. Confirmed with dispatch. Send the word anytime. I typed one word with my thumb, not looking down. Muscle memory. I had practiced it in the car. I placed the phone back in my purse, looked up, and smiled. Not the small, pleasing smile I had been trained to give. Not the nervous smile that says, please don't be mad. A real one. Calm. Clear. The smile of someone who knows exactly what is about to happen. Mom noticed. Her eyes narrowed. What's funny? Nothing's funny, Mom. Not a single thing. I picked up the contract again, slowly, page by page. Since we're all here, I said, let me share what I found. Mom straightened. She thought I was coming around. I turned to page 2, section 3. Assets of the bride. Someone had listed my savings account balance. $7,412. I looked up. I've never shared that number with anyone in this room. Silence. Page 4. Section 7. Marital residence. The Prescott property on Route 12. No other option listed. No choice for independent housing. Wade uncrossed his legs. Page 5. Section 9. I read it slowly, making sure every word landed. The bride agrees to give up independent employment within 60 days of the marriage date. I set the page down. You want me to quit my job? Mom's face was a mask. Wade's family doesn't need you working. This isn't about what Wade's family needs. This is about taking away my income so I can't leave. I looked at Kenner. His leather folder was closed now. His hands were folded on top of it. He was watching me the way you watch a car accident, unable to look away. I turned to Wade. Did you write this, or did my mother? Wade's jaw tightened. The terms are standard. Standard for what exactly? No answer. I turned to my mother. You listed my bank balance. You negotiated my home. You wrote a clause that takes away my ability to earn money. And you signed it before I even knew it existed. I set the contract down on the table, square in the center, like a piece of evidence. This isn't a marriage, Mom. This is a sale. The word sat in the air between us like a lit match. I turned to my father. He hadn't moved from the door. Hadn't spoken more than 2 words all night. Dad, how much do you owe the Prescotts? His chin lifted just slightly. That's none of your business. It's directly my business because I'm how you're planning to pay it off. The room went completely still. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. Wade looked at Gerald. Gerald looked at the floor. Mom's hand slammed the table. Don't you dare accuse your father. $40,000, I said evenly. Aunt Denise told me. A land loan that went wrong due last spring. And instead of selling something or working out a payment plan, you decided to sell me. Gerald's arms dropped to his sides. First time all night. Wade's calm finally cracked. He stood up from the couch. I don't think that's inaccurate. Then correct me. He didn't. Kenner rose from his chair, both hands gripping the folder. I think I need to reassess the situation here. Sit down. Mom's voice broke high and sharp, the kind of sound that carries through walls. I paid you. Ma'am. Kenner held up one hand. If this is not a voluntary union, I cannot proceed. I will not proceed. He moved toward the door, but Gerald was still standing there. No longer blocking it on purpose, but blocking it out of habit, out of size, out of the sheer stubbornness of a man who doesn't know how to step aside. Nobody's leaving yet, Gerald said. Not loud. Almost tired. Kenner stopped. Looked at the door. Looked at Gerald. Looked at me. And I watched it register on his face. The realization that he, too, was now trapped. Denise, Mom hissed under her breath. I will deal with her. Kenner took one more step toward the door. Mr. Archer, I need to leave. When it's done, sir. It is done. I'm not performing this ceremony. Gerald didn't move. He filled that doorway the way he always has. Not with rage, but with size. A man who believes that standing still is the same as being right. I looked at the scene from outside myself for a moment. 4 adults. A man blocking a door. A house on a quiet street on a Friday night. If you drove past, you would see a porch light. Maybe hear nothing. That's how it works in Grayfield. Everything ugly happens behind closed curtains. Mom changed her approach. Her voice went soft and wounded again. The victim track. Diana, look what you're doing. You're embarrassing us in front of Mr. Kenner. In front of Wade. Is this who you are? I almost laughed. She was worried about embarrassment in the middle of an ambush. A car pulled into the driveway next door. Headlights swept across the living room curtains. Mom's head snapped toward the window. Close the blinds, Gerald. He crossed the room and pulled the cord. The blinds rattled shut. Then he returned to the door. I checked the microwave clock again. 7:48 p.m. Dad, I said, you are physically preventing 4 people from leaving this house. Do you know what that's called? He didn't answer. It's called unlawful restraint. In Georgia, it's a misdemeanor. Unless it involves a threat of violence, then it's a felony. Dad's hands, hanging at his sides now, curled into fists. Not to hit anyone. I know my father. It was the only way he knew how to hold himself together. Somewhere outside, very faint, I thought I heard a siren. But I wasn't sure yet. I set the contract down on the table and centered it neatly between the flowers and the empty place setting. Then I stood up slowly. The chair barely made a sound. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I looked at Wade Prescott, who had driven 40 minutes to buy a woman with somebody else's debt. And I smiled. Not a smirk. Not a grin. The kind of smile that comes when every single piece finally falls into its place and you can see the whole picture. Mom. Dad. My voice was so steady it didn't feel like mine. You really should have read what I filed yesterday. 3 seconds of silence. The longest 3 seconds that living room had ever held. What did you file? Mom's voice was thin. I opened my purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. Cream-colored, crisp. I placed the first one on the table. This is an emergency protective order, signed this morning by a judge at the county courthouse. It prohibits both of you from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of me. Effective immediately. I placed the second envelope beside it. And this is a formal complaint filed with Adult Protective Services, documenting a years-long pattern of coercive control, emotional manipulation, and isolation. I set them down right next to the marriage contract. 3 documents on a white tablecloth. 2 of theirs. 2 of mine. The room didn't breathe. Then Mom's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A notification from the county court system. Then Dad's phone in his back pocket vibrated against the door frame. And from outside, no longer faint, no longer maybe, came the sound of a siren. Getting closer. Then stopping. Right in front of the house. Mom grabbed her phone off the counter. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to try her passcode twice. I watched her face as she read the notification from the court system. Her name, my name, the order number, the terms. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. What is this? What did you do? Dad pulled his phone from his back pocket. Same notification. He read it the way he reads everything. Slow, lips slightly moving. And I saw something I had never seen before on Gerald Archer's face. Fear. Wade Prescott was already on his feet. I haven't signed anything. I'm not part of. I need to leave. For the first time all night, the flat, businesslike voice had a crack in it. He wasn't worried about the wedding anymore. He was worried about himself. Kenner saw his opening. The moment Gerald stepped away from the door to check his phone, Kenner moved fast for a 62-year-old man. He had the front door open and was through it before anyone could react. Blue and red lights pulsed through the open doorway, washing across the white tablecloth, the flowers, the contract, and my mother's face. A patrol car sat at the curb, engine running. I could hear Kenner's voice outside, talking fast to someone, then footsteps on the porch. Mom looked at me. Not with anger. Not yet. That would come later. Right now it was something worse. Disbelief. The expression of someone whose script had been flipped, who wrote every line of the play and suddenly doesn't recognize the scene. Diana. Her voice cracked down the middle. You called the police on your own parents? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The knock on the door answered for me. The officer at the door was a woman. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back, calm eyes that took in the room in about 2 seconds flat. Good evening. I'm Officer Holland with the County Sheriff's Department. We received notification that an emergency protective order is active at this address. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. I stepped forward. I'm Diana Archer. I'm the one who filed the protective order. I was invited here under false pretenses and was physically prevented from leaving. Holland looked past me. The tablecloth, the candles, the marriage contract, the 2 envelopes. Her eyes moved to Gerald, standing 3 feet from the open door, arms at his sides. Sir, did you prevent anyone from leaving this residence tonight? This is my house, Gerald said. That's not the question I asked. Kenner's voice came from the porch behind her, rapid and urgent. Officer, I was also prevented from leaving. I'm a licensed officiant. I was brought here under the understanding that both parties had consented. That is clearly not the case. Holland nodded once. She stepped inside. A second officer appeared behind her, younger, staying near the door. Mr. and Mrs. Archer, I'm going to need to speak with each of you separately. Sir, if you could step outside with my partner. Gerald looked at the officer. Then at Mom. Then for one long moment, at me. He walked out the front door without a word. His footsteps on the porch were heavy and slow. It was the first time in my life I had watched my father leave a doorway because someone else told him to. Holland turned to me, her voice dropping. Not to a whisper, but to something gentler. Professional warmth. You're safe now. Is there anything else you need? I shook my head. Just this. Just to be believed. In Grayfield, Georgia, a police car on your street is a headline. A police car in your driveway with the lights still going is front page news. Mrs. Patterson from next door was already on her porch, arms crossed over her housecoat, phone in hand, not even pretending she wasn't watching. Across the street at the Delgados, the front light came on. I saw a curtain move at the Riley house on the corner. Mom saw it too. She was standing at the living room window, the blinds still half open from when Kenner had pushed through the door. The blue and red lights painted her face in alternating colors. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles in her neck. Are you happy now? She turned to me, voice low and bitter. You've destroyed this family. The whole street is watching.
I didn't destroy anything, Mom.
I just let people see what you're doing. She flinched. An actual flinch. Like the words had weight. Outside, the second officer was talking to Wade, who had tried to slip out through the back door. I saw him through the kitchen window, standing by his truck, arms wide in a "don't look at me" gesture. I was just here as a guest, I heard him say. Mr. Archer contacted me. I came as a courtesy. Already throwing Gerald under the bus. 40 minutes of partnership dissolved in 30 seconds of self-preservation. Holland was taking notes at the dining table. She had placed the marriage contract in an evidence bag. It sat on the white tablecloth like a patient on a stretcher. Mom whispered from the window. Not to me. Not to anyone really. Everyone will know. The whole town. Yes, they will. And for the first time in your life, you won't be able to control the story. Kenner gave his statement on the front porch under the yellow glow of the light my mother always keeps on to look welcoming. He handed Holland his phone, showing the email chain from Lorraine. Date. Time. Payment confirmation. She had sent him $250 through a mobile payment app. Subject line. Friday ceremony. Archer/Prescott. She told me both parties were eager, Kenner said. His voice was unsteady. She said her daughter was shy but happy. That this was a family celebration. Holland documented everything. Email timestamps. The marriage contract, now sealed in plastic.
Kenner's account of the evening. Who sat where, what was said, the moment he tried to leave and was stopped.
She turned to me. Miss Archer, I have the protective order number on file. Your parents will be formally told that contact with you is prohibited under the terms of the order. I handed her a printed copy of the protective order from my purse, then the Adult Protective Services case number written on a sticky note. Then I told her about the voice recording on my phone. I've been recording since I walked in. Holland paused and looked at me. Not surprised, exactly, but recalibrating. That's admissible in Georgia. One-party consent state. I nodded. From the driveway, the second officer was writing up Gerald. Unlawful restraint. Noted on the spot. Not an arrest, not that night, but a formal record. A paper trail. Kenner turned to me before he left. His eyes were red-rimmed. Ms. Archer, I didn't know. I'm truly sorry.
I believe you, I said. He walked to his car, started the engine, and pulled away slowly, like he was trying not to make any more noise in a night that had already been too loud.
I stood on the porch and watched his tail lights disappear. Holland told Gerald he would be cited for unlawful restraint. A misdemeanor. Not jail, not that night. But a record, a formal document with his name, the date, and a description of what he did. I watched my father hear those words. He didn't argue. Didn't raise his voice. He just stood there on the front lawn under the pecan tree he planted the year I was born, and something in his posture changed. The broad shoulders that had filled every doorway of my childhood seemed to narrow. The arms that had been folded like armor all night hung loose and purposeless. He looked at me through the open front door. Not angry. Not begging. Something I had never seen from him before. Confused. Like he was looking at someone he didn't recognize. I held his gaze. I didn't look away.
I didn't give him the small, apologetic nod he had been trained to expect from me for 27 years.
Then I turned back inside.
Mom was sitting at the dining table, in the chair that had been set out for me during the ceremony.
The candles had burned down, wax pooled on the tablecloth. She was staring at the 2 envelopes I had placed there, the protective order, the APS complaint, like they were something alive. This isn't over, Diana. I'll get a lawyer. Officer Holland stepped back in. Ma'am, I'd strongly recommend you do get an attorney for yourself. Mom looked at Holland, then at me, then at the empty chair where Wade had been sitting. Adult Protective Services will be contacting both of you within 5 business days, Holland added, writing something on her notepad. The investigation is already open. Mom opened her mouth. Closed it. For the first time in my life, Lorraine Archer didn't have a line prepared. The silence was the loudest sound I had ever heard in that house. Wade Prescott was released after giving his statement. Holland told him the same thing she had told my parents. He might receive a court summons if the investigation continued. He didn't respond. Didn't look at anyone. He just climbed into his black truck, started the engine, threw it into reverse, and backed down the driveway with the precision of a man who wanted to erase every second he had spent on Buckner Road. I stood on the porch and watched the tail lights shrink down the road until they disappeared past the curve by the old grain silo. That man drove 40 minutes to this house. He sat on that couch for over an hour.
He looked me in the eye and said, "I think you'll find the terms very reasonable."
He knew I had never seen him before. He knew I hadn't agreed to anything. And he stayed anyway. Tonight, he goes home with nothing.
Not the wife he had arranged to collect, not the $40,000 leverage over my father, not even his dignity, because he had thrown Gerald under the bus the moment the blue lights hit the driveway.
Kenner had already left. Now Wade. The only people remaining were my parents, 2 officers, and me. Holland walked over. "Miss Archer, you're free to go whenever you're ready. The order is in effect. If either parent contacts you or comes within 500 feet, call dispatch immediately." I thanked her and shook her hand.
One of the officers, the younger one, murmured something to his partner as he headed back to the patrol car.
I caught it just barely. First time I've seen anything like this in Grayfield. I picked up my purse from the dining table. Walked past the white tablecloth, the melted candles, the empty chairs. $40,000. That was the number my parents put on my life. I walked out the front door on my own terms. The drive home was 45 minutes of silence. I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call Megan. Didn't call Denise. Just drove. Both hands on the wheel. The headlights cutting through the dark stretch of Route 9, where the street lights give out and it's just you and the pine trees. My hands were shaking. They hadn't shaken all night. Not when Dad blocked the door. Not when Mom cried. Not when I pulled out the envelopes. But now, alone in the car with no one to be strong for, my body finally caught up. I thought about my mother. Not the woman who had set a trap for me tonight. The other one. The one who used to braid my hair so tight it would last 3 days. Who made mac and cheese from scratch when I had the flu. Who kept every single one of my report cards in a shoebox on the top shelf of her closet. Then I thought about that same woman. Signing a contract with my name on it. Listing my bank account balance. Hiring an officiant. Choosing a stranger. Blocking the door. Both of those women are my mother. That's the part no one tells you about. The people who hurt you the worst aren't strangers. They're the ones who know exactly where you're soft, because they made you that way. I pulled into my parking spot at 9:20 p.m. Turned off the engine. Sat in the dark for a while, listening to the tick of the cooling engine and the distant bark of someone's dog. Then I went inside, locked the door, slid down the kitchen wall to the floor, and cried. Hard and ugly and loud. The way you can only cry when no one's watching and you don't have to be strong anymore. Megan called at 11. "You okay?" "I don't know. But I'm safe." I fell asleep on the kitchen floor that night. When I woke up Saturday morning, my phone showed 23 missed calls. I sat on the kitchen floor and scrolled. 11 calls from Mom. I could chart her emotional journey just from the timestamps. 3 minutes apart at first, angry energy, then longer gaps, then a cluster around 2 a.m. when the crying phase would have kicked in. 4 from Dad. No voicemails. Classic Gerald. Call. Wait. Hang up. Repeat. Silence delivered in installments. 3 from relatives I barely speak to. Fishing for details. 2 from Aunt Denise. I called her back first. "You okay, baby?" "Tired but okay." "What are you hearing?" Denise exhaled. "It's everywhere." Mrs. Patterson told her walking group before breakfast. By noon, every woman in Grayfield who owns a pair of sneakers knew there was a police car in your mama's driveway. 1 call from Wade Prescott's number. No voicemail. Then the number was blocked. He deleted it from his end. 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. I returned none of them except Denise's. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Long. The kind of message she writes like a legal argument. Full of blame and redirected guilt. I read the first line. "You have destroyed your father and me. I cannot show my face. I hope you're satisfied." I took a screenshot, added it to the evidence folder on my phone, and filed it the way Megan taught me. Date, time, quick summary of the content. It was automatic now. 3 years of practice. Denise told me one more thing before she hung up. Your mother called your Aunt Patrice this morning. Told her you've been mentally influenced. That's the story she's going with. I wasn't surprised. Lorraine Archer doesn't lose. She rewrites. But this time, there were too many witnesses. An officer's report. A court order. A recording on my phone. The story was already written, and she didn't hold the pen. The call from Adult Protective Services came the following Wednesday. A caseworker named Sandra Whitfield. Professional, warm, thorough. She told me they had opened a formal investigation based on my complaint and the supporting documents. Miss Archer, your file is one of the most detailed we've received. The timeline, the screenshots, the supporting witness statements, it all helps. She asked if I could provide the original notebook. I told her I had already submitted 42 photocopied pages with the protective order application, but I could bring the original to her office. That would be ideal. She explained the process. Interviews with my parents, with neighbors, with anyone I listed as having witnessed the pattern. Gerald and Lorraine would be contacted by mail within 5 business days. What happens if they don't cooperate? I asked. Lack of cooperation is noted in the file. But it doesn't stop the investigation. Megan sent me an update the same day. Gerald's unlawful restraint citation had been processed. A misdemeanor. Formally on record. No jail time, but now part of his permanent file, visible in any future background check, any future legal proceeding involving the family. Kenner, the officiant, had voluntarily submitted a written statement to APS without being asked. He laid out everything. The email from Lorraine, the payment, the moment he realized I hadn't agreed, the moment Gerald blocked the door. He's cooperating fully. Megan said he's scared he'll lose his license. And Wade Prescott. Silent. According to Denise, he had told his father the deal was off. No explanation. No argument. He just shut it down. The $40,000 debt was still there. Gerald still owed the Prescotts. But the way he had tried to pay it, with me, was off the table permanently. I hung up with Sandra Whitfield and sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just breathing. The system was working. Slowly, imperfectly, full of paperwork, but working. 2 weeks after the dinner, a letter arrived at my apartment. Not from my parents. From their attorney. A formal request to cancel the emergency protective order, claiming I had greatly exaggerated a routine family disagreement. I forwarded it to Megan. She read it over the phone in the tone she saves for things that are both legally weak and personally insulting. This is harassment, Diana. And it just added another exhibit to your file. 3 days later, Mom called the veterinary clinic and asked to speak with my manager. Dr. Marsh told me about it during my lunch break, her face careful and kind. Your mother called this morning. She said, and I'm quoting, "My daughter is emotionally unstable and shouldn't be trusted with responsibilities." My stomach dropped. Dr. Marsh put her hand on my arm. I told her that you're one of the most reliable people on my staff. And I told her that if she calls again, I'll document it as workplace harassment. I thanked her. I don't think she knew how much that meant. Lorraine was running out of ways to reach me. The walking group had quietly stopped inviting her. Mrs. Patterson waved politely, but didn't stop to chat. At the hardware store, people who used to talk to her about gardening made small talk and moved on. Grayfield is small enough that everyone knows, and polite enough that nobody says it to your face. Then Gerald called. One call, short. I didn't know it would go this far. His voice was low, rough. But you still blocked the door, Dad. Silence. Then the click of a disconnected line. I told Megan that night over coffee. She looked at me with steady eyes. He's not sorry for what he did. He's sorry it didn't work. I wanted to argue. I couldn't.